I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. First item on the agenda is privilege of the floor. Okay. Second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of August 9th. Yes. Oh, I thought you had a question or something. I just wanted to say that I was hoping that some of my statement would have been attached to the minutes or mention of the president rebutting the newspaper and just putting the community's needs and questions and concerns at ease. That's why I did the whole statement thing. So I was just a little dismayed, I guess, that they weren't attached to the minutes for anyone to read that wanted to. Any other questions?
That can certainly be done.
I emailed you a copy of the whole statement, so.
That can be done as an attachment here?
It's part of the meeting.
Yeah, it was.
Shouldn't that be part of the meeting?
It was privilege of the floor, so, I mean, it was important because it was flack and I wanted to nullify any, so it not being there kind of defeats the purpose of me spewing, so that's all. Any other questions?
It can be inserted if you like,
If you wouldn't mind, just, you should still have a.
with an amendment to include the statement
Statement.
by Madam President.
So we can approve it, and we'll approve these minutes with the approval of the amendment of my statement. On we have Frank and Norma. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Jack?
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everyone. I have my two normal reports, the balance sheet and the profit and loss for the months of July and August, the first 2 months of the new fiscal year. Last month we only had the 1 month, so this one you have 2 months to go side by side. They haven't really changed that much, other than the fact that July was a 3 payroll period month, August was 2 pay periods like most months. But year to date, on the salary line, we're slightly under $279 under. That's after 5 pay periods. So it's pretty close to being on. And my assistant Audrey is now out, so the payroll will probably be a little lighter in the next few pay periods. And also, some of the pay periods that are already in this report, we had extra hours for people, so for various reasons. So if anything, the payroll should stay consistently slightly below budget. I would figure. And quick back to the income side, the library charges are almost dead on. $3,825 in, budgeted $3,833, so within $7. And that's with the new higher figure that we use for the current fiscal year of $23,000 of library charges. Compared to prior years, we'd used $20,000. So that so far is holding up pretty well compared to our expectations and hopes. The books, July has all been entered, but August has not been entered. But I would just say for August, use fairly the same figures as we have in July for adult, teen, and juvenile. But in August, we did make a serial, under the account serials, we made a large payment to, I think was it EBSCO, Matt, the one that we do once a year?
Yes.
So that kind of threw off the whole figuring for August. You see it's $3,567 compared to the budget of $458, but that's because that $3,567 is a one-time charge for the whole year. So, but we don't spread that over, we just take the whole budget for the year and divide it by 12 months, but that's why that one is kind of out of whack there. But that'll even out as the year goes on. Nothing else really stands out on the first page. We now have the repair split among 5,000 for the whole year under building and the other 5,000 under new building, which is under the other expense categories, but so far nothing has come up in those lines. The answer, back in July, we had the first quarterly payment for answer, which was a little bit under, a couple actually pretty good under budget. Because I think we added to the answer budget for this year, because we were kind of a little uncertain of how much it was gonna go up, so we added a little just to be prudent. On the next category, subcategory programs, we split adult programs and community development programs separately. So now, I think last month we had it like that too. You see there's two separate lines. The community development had a lot of programs for the first couple of months, so that's why that's over budget, but that'll even out as the year goes on. And nothing else really stands out. The loan on the bottom, the interest is just the interest amount. The difference is the amount that goes to the principal. So that's why it looks like it's under budget. It's really not. It's just, you can't really category principal payment as an expense, because it's not an expense, it's reducing the liability. And the loan, as of August 31st, is down to 404, but on September 2nd, we made another payment, so now it's down to 397,809, so under 400,000 as of early September. And that's pretty much where we stand now. As of this report, we had 61,000 in the key checking. I think it's down to like 26,000 now, so we might have to do one more transfer before we get our first tax check at the end of the month. On September 30th, we usually get it, but we'll have one more pay period before then, so we'll probably have to pull a little bit more, but we'll probably end up with right around the 60,000 left in the Orange County Trust, which we projected when we did the TAN estimate way back when, which is within a few $1,000s of what we had thought, because we don't want to run the key down to too low. And out of the 90,000, we'll have to do one. Well, the 90,000 on this is before the 9,000 for the September payment, so it's really about 81,000. So if we pull another 40, we'll have about 40 left, and then whatever would be left in the checking after that. So it's pretty close to what we had projected when we did the TAN estimate. And then on September 30th, I anticipate we'll get the first tax revenue check minus the 75,000 for the TAN repayment. So then we should be in fine shape. And then when we get that, we'll just have to decide, I guess, to put it in the Orange County money market account to earn the higher rate, or at least put a good portion of it in there. I guess we could just, decide what to do when that comes up. Other than that, that's pretty much where we stand.
Any questions for John?
I know you can't do anything about the computer transit tax, but have we sent an official protest letter to whoever is involved with that? I know other municipalities have just, add our 2 cents to the complaint list.
Any other questions or comments? Motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make that motion.
Shelley. Second, Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
You're free.
Okay,
Have
thank
a
you.
nice dinner.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Have a good meeting, everybody.
Thank you.
It's my wife's birthday, so.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Should we sing for her?
Yeah,
watching.
yeah, right.
She's watching.
Happy
Just
birthday.
kidding. You're putting on lipstick right now. You're on your way home.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, Jack.
Bye now.
All right, Matt, director's report.
Hello, everybody. Just got back from a week away, so forgive me if I catch up with everything here. Piles of emails. I guess the main things to report would be that so far I have no definitive answer from Waywanda's town board about whether they want to re-up on the contract. Last I got I received a text message from Mr. Cole saying that they were still sort of up in the air. So I'll let you know. So it expires tomorrow, so he said he would tell me this week what they've decided. We did receive a second check for them. I think it was $3,300 this month, and we'll have to see what they want to do. The other big thing is I brought this up last time. We're still working with the DLD. Lisa Sievert's the attorney at the Division of Library Development, the New York State Education, has given us some preliminary documents. I think Tiffany and Jim to take a look at. This has to do with changing amending the charter of the library. which a lot of New York State libraries have to do because of the vague language regarding surface area. That's the main reason they wanted us to do it. The only, she said really the only thing we can change other than that would be the name, which I don't think anyone's interested in changing the name, or the number of trustees. Right now it states 7, and some libraries like to have flexibility, so they put the legal span is 5 to 15, and that allows the trustees to decide sometimes.
We don't have
7's
room.
not enough, man.
We
We don't have
don't
enough.
have room.
No, we don't have room, so.
So we need to, decide if we wanna keep that as
Right.
7 or have a range.
Or have a range.
That's what it wants to.
I mean, I guess some libraries just looking forward in case that, there's sudden expansion or decline, you can make that adjustment. The other thing was I had an interesting kind of roundabout time trying to get to the bottom of this business of building rehabilitation costs, whether there's some kind of, as you read, some kind of cap on how much we can spend before we would have to bring the entire building up to code. And I spoke with a number of people and got a variety of answers.
I'm sorry, as
Sure.
you talk to these people, did you get closer to the one that could give us the answer? Is that how we should read this?
I'm not sure. I was hoping that Robert Hubscher would be here. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. He had some other plans, but he will be here next month if you still would like him to come. He was one of the people I spoke to, and he was one of the strongest in thinking that if we make any change, he used the RCLS building as an example. They just tried I forget what they had to fix, but they had to do something to, I think, add a room somewhere. And apparently it got down to the point where the town of Way On, the building inspector, came in and saw what they were doing and said, okay, everything has to be brought up to code. They had to actually redo their they had 2 bathrooms, male and female. They had to make a unisex bathroom and widen the doorway by, I think, 3 inches or something. So it was this huge amount of money expended to get the bathrooms up to code because they were working on, a room at the other end of the building. So he says he thinks that we would run into he has no doubt, and he spoke very, right.
But Matt, this is RCLS's building?
This is RCLS's building.
And when was it is that a new building relative
It's a
or?
relatively new building.
50 years? Well, I don't know, they've been around 50 years, I don't know if they've been in that building, but yeah, it's newer than
The building
this.
on 17M?
Yes.
Well, I've never been in it, but I you drive by it, it looks like it's 20
20 years.
years old
Yeah.
at most.
So probably doesn't even predate ADA, the building itself.
1970s?
It's hard to say.
I think so, it's, I don't know what
It's
road.
hard to describe. It's off 17, like if you're driving on the highway, it's parallel on this road, the RCLS building.
And it's modernistic, isn't it? It's design,
But when I spoke to Mr. I think it's Rockland, who I was pointing to him through our building inspector. He seemed, and he's supposed to be the New York State sort of expert on these things, and he thought that we would be grandfathered because of the age of the building. And he said to get in touch with the state department, I think, either SHPO, I wrote it in here, or one of these state departments that deals with historical buildings. He thought that was our way around that problem. And he brought up some terms. It depends on the amount that you were changing. If you were actually doing restructuring a common space where people would be. It's different than a roof. In other words, if you're doing a roof, you may not have to bring the rest of the building up to code. But if you're doing a common area where there are chairs and such, then the whole building has to be brought up. But again, he said, as with libraries, and I mean, there seemed to be a lot of play with this. He said, as long as you have made you can prove to a court, if you had to, that you've made some provisions for people with disabilities. Even if it was something like somebody asked for a book they can't get down the stairs, you have somebody there to bring it up to them. And that would be a fair enough counter to a suit that if someone were to bring it up against you. According to Robert Hubscher, that's not the case. He, of course, is a library system director, and he's dealt with some of these things, and he thinks that we are in jeopardy of having such a suit launched against us should there be somebody unable to reach some part of the building. So I was hoping he would be here to give us some more examples of other libraries in this system that have dealt with this, and maybe their experience, because
But it's amazing, Matt, that we have this big monster elephant in a room that is conforming to ADA and an annual bow to the gods that we have to do every year, and then nobody knows what it is.
I agree, it's strange. And
I mean, it's, okay, I've got another thing to talk about later,
Sure.
go ahead.
But the ADA is not what I have to submit the, we get clearance every year for the state codes that we're in violation of. And those state codes are not nearly as explicit as the ADA. They don't, it doesn't come in terms of square footage and inches, it's sort of, is there enough lighting? Is there enough seating? And there is no formula. And I think when, of course, so when my predecessor signed off on this, you know, basically she would go down a list and say, is there enough lighting? No. Is there enough? No. And that's a judgment call. I mean, that's a tough one, you know, and that's what I sign the variance for every year. That the ADA is a done deal. We're a building of a certain age, and we're not required, as the building stands, to bring that part of the building up to code. The question then came in whether you made some kind of, you know, considerable rehabilitation of the building, whether you had to bring the rest of this ADA, and that's those stacks that are up there that are built into the foundation. Those are the ones that are that we're sort of grandfathered in and able to operate even with those. They're, I guess, 6 inches too narrow. So there are two different things. What I sign off on, that variance is the state code that is.
You know, I don't know if everybody's aware, but the floor in the balcony, number one, is glass, and number two, it's supported by the stacks themselves. I didn't know if everybody was aware of that.
There's a structural.
It's
Right.
really wild.
It's an amazing building.
It truly is.
But where do we go from here? Because this is.
I'd
This is
almost
a
say
critical-
go back to
this is
step
a-
one. Go back to, go back to
No,
jail.
I mean, this is the number one reason in my mind why we would pursue getting another building, because we could be shut down if something like a tree fell on the roof and we had to close for renovation. We'd have to renovate the whole building to be compliant. Is that the case or is it not? You know, if it is the case, I mean, actually, I would
don't know.
love for it to be the case because it's a good
But we
reason.
don't know for sure now.
I know.
Well, when I spoke to the state,
How do we know?
I mean, this is where it gets really sort of Twilight Zone-ish. The woman said, you know, and these are attorneys, I presume all of them that are working, you know, at least they offer legal opinions on things. So she said, I've heard that rumor that there's some kind of cap,
I've heard that.
but I have yet to see anybody show me where it is. And she said, in fact, I think the rumor emanated from the RCLS district. So I'm not sure. She didn't know either. Now I think it seems to me.
Conventional
You
wisdom.
know, it's an urban legend, it sounds like. It all goes back, I think, to the building inspector in Middletown. I mean, he is saying they have to do it, and so they're doing it, but what's his basis for saying that?
Right.
Yeah, is that
He
the
should be able to
town
provide
ordinance?
that
Maybe it's an
information.
ordinance in Middletown.
Right, and maybe they have like
Right.
some kind of standard for public buildings, and that's why it has to do it, it has something to do with us.
Right.
And I'm sorry that I couldn't get to the bottom. I tried my damnedest. I just didn't. I have a feeling there's, you know, I have a feeling that there's that there is as Pauline sort of, you know, one of her parting points of wisdom, which has held up, is that she said to me, well, you know, there's not really a lot of teeth in library law, and I think it's one of these things where it's sort of how I don't want to say here on my camera. I don't think it's how people are spinning it, but there is room to, you know, some of these things. I mean, there is the ADA. That's a real requirement. If you were to build a building today on a spot, you'd have to bring, you have to.
And that's not library law, that's law.
Right,
That's- yeah,
exactly.
building.
So these other things that you know that we're talking about, there's no a formula that you can apply. It's just, it seems a lot of them have to do with judgment, and a lot of them have to do with the fear of potential lawsuits
So
and
if we
tried
went
to
to
guard
court,
against that.
there's no prosecution to even go back to look to see we're wrong.
Right.
Not that I found, we
There's no
talked to them.
case law.
So,
Yeah.
It sounds like what we're talking about is directly connected to our roof here. That's the most immediate expense that we foresee.
Right.
And even Robert Hupster's comment, he talks about substantial change made to the building. If you replace a roof that's leaking, you have not made a substantial change to the
Like-
building.
Repair.
So even going, he's the one who's the most cautious about this.
Mhm.
And even using his language, we're not gonna be in trouble if we have to spend money on our roof.
I wouldn't think so from what I gathered.
And we don't plan on doing anything else to the building in the foreseeable future. We're exploring, as you mentioned, other options for a variety of reasons. So I mean, I respect what you've done here because this kind of research it's maddening. And it takes a lot of time to get these people actually to talk to them.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you can ultimately discover the solution without spending a lot of your
Sure.
time
Well,
in
I'll
the
continue.
future, but I think
There's a
based on
couple,
what you found, we should not worry about that in regard to the roof.
I just thought it was funny when she said, yeah, I heard that rumor. And exactly what she said. And she said, but I've never been able to put my finger on a law or on a regulation or on a code. But I'm not gonna say it's not true. She said, in fact, we're gonna research it on our end, you go ahead and research it on your end, and we'll meet in the middle, and we both met and
Yeah,
guided.
right.
it's
I
like a
hate to
kindergarten class
remind
with
you
a
about
teacher not
Hubner
knowing what
though,
she's doing.
well, Hubner, or whatever,
Kindergarten and a teacher
Hubner,
not knowing what she's
is he
doing.
does have a side business building libraries.
Yeah.
So, and this is the guy who's been,
Well,
I think that has to be on the table
Absolutely.
when we're
absolutely.
looking at the largest proponent.
Yeah, if you're making a
They're
judgment
pushing
call, it
us.
might tend to
Well,
lean
if-
one way or the other.
Right.
But if he's basing his assessment that there is a cap and there would be a problem on what happened to the RCLS building, that's a separate issue than him trying to get into building the library.
Yeah, he didn't immediately induce any other library of this age and this, you know, he was
Sure, he was
basically
talking
talking
about
about
his
his
building,
experience
his
there.
The other
experience.
interesting point is that we seem to have a propensity of going to the town appraiser or the building inspector. We have no business
Yeah, we already
doing
had
that.
talked about that.
We should not even be talking to the guy. We are a separate government entity. They have no rights or no rights to an opinion of anything that happens in this building, any more than they do in the school district building or in the village building. They have no rights. They have no say in what we can and what we can't do. It's the state that decides what we can do, not the town assessor, not the town building inspector. And they should not be taken into any, by asking their advice, we're giving them credibility and we're offering them an entree into our world that they do not legally have.
I don't know about that. I mean, for a couple of things. You're asking the building inspector because he is probably the resident expert, if you want to call him that. And he's a good point of reference. And the other thing is, I mean, Matt talked to him and Ted referred Matt someplace else, which is a good sign that Ted didn't have any immediate information and maybe wasn't even completely or immediately interested in it. But when it comes down to somebody saying, well, now that you're like a resident, just one resident saying, well, you're doing all this work, now you have to conform to ADA, does Ted get involved in that point? That's the question to ask.
No, I'm not talking about ADA because I don't think a town building inspector would have a clue about ADA.
Well,
Yeah, so, but
Based on
we,
the age.
excuse me?
Yeah.
It's like the school district, when they do something to the school, they get bids and everything for the state, but Ted doesn't run over there and say, how'd you do on the roof? It's like you said, it's a separate,
Right, and they shouldn't, I still feel that we should avoid dealing with the building inspector. We're just giving him entree into our affairs that he doesn't have. We could ask him for advice
I
on,
think that was.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he may have some expertise. He may be able to say, well, I've heard about this before, and go and talk with so-and-so. I mean, he may have known something, because he is in a related field here.
But-
But he didn't.
But he didn't.
But he did make a referral, didn't he?
Yes, he's the one that referred me to
Yeah,
Steve
so
Rocker.
he knew who to refer that to in his next step, so it wasn't totally worth this conversation.
What about, do you know people at RCLS that you could try to find out why they had some woes with their construction of late that might point to some law?
It's local
No?
law.
I mean, I would think you wouldn't do something, you know, you wouldn't take care of a woe unless you had to, right? Because we're talking money here.
Well,
Hopefully
the
they
building
want-
inspector came in and said do it.
Was it the town building?
He said, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that's a fair
Yeah,
assumption,
We're
but.
back,
you know.
back to.
Well, then that's,
Did he
so
actually
then
have
do you refer to that?
And RCLS does not have the rights that we have.
Oh, okay, that's why.
They're subject to
That's
local
right.
building codes.
Yeah, okay.
We're not. We're a government entity.
Well, there you go.
They are not.
How do we find out?
It's very.
No, I'm telling you.
I know,
No,
I'm
That's
listening
a
to you.
They don't issue a certificate
That's
of
it.
occupancy? Or that-
Excuse me?
They don't issue certificates of occupancy?
Who?
The
That's
town?
a local town.
The local town inspector?
We have,
Don't issue to,
do they issue COs?
Yeah, certificate of occupancies.
to,
Any
For
building.
any
Any-
construction,
yeah.
Yeah,
any
for any
minor
construction.
or whatever.
yes, but,
Yeah.
For us?
no.
You're saying no. We got a
We
building,
are
permit.
totally
In order to
exempt.
put the light out
Right.
front, we had to get a building
You
permit.
didn't need it. You went out and got it. You didn't need it.
He
And I hope you
indicated-
didn't pay for it.
He indicated that we did need it.
You don't need it. Believe me.
All right, well,
Believe
we're not
me,
gonna
you don't
resolve
need
this
it.
tonight.
You're a government entity. You're representing the people in a much larger area than the town, in fact.
Anything else?
Okay, that's-
We are not subject
Well, I will
to
give up on this. I don't
building,
know.
building,
Permits.
Oh, the newsletter, did you get it yet? Anyone get the newsletter yet?
No.
It should be any day, yeah, it's, when I left, it was on the way out, there was a hang up, for once it wasn't us, it was, they had a back order on
Back-
paper or something.
if you paid for a building permit, we should get that money back.
You talking about me or the?
If the library paid for a building
We did.
permit, we should get that money back in behalf of our taxpayers.
I'll look into it, sure.
How much
People
was
out
it?
of town with pitchforks.
25?
Certificates of occupancy for building.
Whatever it was.
It's $100, I think, wasn't it?
No, I understand.
$100.
Money's money.
Matt,
Yes.
back on where we're under, what is okay, so tomorrow is the day.
Tomorrow's the day,
Do we
yeah.
start branding people from
Well,
way
you know,
yonder or
we
far
set it up-
ahead or?
We set it up at the time that they have a year from the day that they sign up for the card, so most of them won't be renewing their cards for a little while. And when they do go to renew it, they won't be able to if the town decided not to. Yeah, but we did actually mark their cards with
Brand.
we punched them out so you can tell which are which when they come up. Yeah.
That's good.
Red
And-
W.
And
That's a
Matt,
borrowed letter.
the other thing you mentioned with the charter, and I think as a possible, item of conversation, is that I feel that any charter changes that we make should be made by, referendum, rather than action of this board,
Why?
because it's the people's library. And when we're,
Well,
Yeah, but that's board policy,
We're
really.
elected representatives of the people.
Right.
Right, and
Yeah.
this is a
And
representative
this
board
is a very
policy
minor
to democracy.
change. This is, actually, it's more of a clarification.
Right, we aren't changing
Yeah.
anything, we're just rewording it so it says.
Right now, it
what
says
we need.
7 members as far as that. So we need to decide if we want to leave it that way or we want to have a range, which is what some operators do. I'm trying to visualize why a board might want to go to more members. If it had people that weren't attending, then there is a procedure to deal with that. We've had, unfortunately, to use. So, I just can't visualize a situation where we don't have a quorum. We can't function because with a 7-member board.
We have it, I'm gonna put on unfinished business, a charter discussion, so if we could hold off till that, if you don't
Okay.
mind. Because, I'm also gonna, are you finished with your charter?
Just last
I'm
thing is.
sorry, Matt.
No, it's okay. Last thing is the painting bids. We have, one is done, the second one, I don't know whether, it just must have been August, everybody called, no one would respond, or, it was like pulling teeth to get someone to come and look at the building, but, Mark McCarthy looked at it today, he hasn't yet submitted it, and I have one other, submission here, and Danny just gave us a raft of names to try just this morning, since he saw me running out of luck with the names I had, but, I never got a call back from the gentleman that did downstairs here, he's probably too busy. But since we are, fall is coming,
Do you know who Ray Katrina uses? He has contractors he works with.
no,
And he's a member of the Friends. I'm sure you could like to share the name of the painter he uses. And perhaps we can get a bit there too.
I think Danny gave us about 5 names, right? So, yeah, but I will ask him, sure. And I think that sums it up. Yeah, that's about it. So, any other questions? I will continue on that research about the next question.
The Preservation League never called you back?
No, I haven't heard from them yet. I'll try them again. And there's a couple related New York State departments that deal with old buildings, so I'll try both of them again, but no one picked up.
It's probably sitting in the library somewhere.
Cornell has that, I'm not sure what they call it, it's an organization that deals with ADA questions, and they were also flummoxed, so.
All right.
There you have it.
Thank you, Matt. On the agenda, if the board doesn't mind, I'd like to move, since Robert is not coming, I'd like to put Ken in his spot and move Ken up to now before unfinished business, because Ken has the egg rehearsal to get to. Is that okay if we move Ken?
Sure.
Thank you. Ken, you're up.
Thanks, good evening. Last time I spoke with you, I believe we were just about to put Cobb on its feet, so I'll give you kind of an explanation of where that went and where we put where everything ended up. We did 5 performances of the play Ty Cobb in Goshen, very well received, and our average audience for that run in Goshen was 94. That's how we averaged, which was pretty good. And then, as I mentioned at that point, we took it on the road, keeping in line with the fact that it's an educational theater series. So it was really good outreach on behalf of the Goshen Public Library Historical Society's educational theater series. And places we took it to included the Storm King School in Cornwall, the Senior Center in Montgomery. We took it to a not-for-profit in Port Jervis. 2 shows we did at the Interactive Museum in Middletown, and we did one in Blooming Grove. So it ran almost until Shakespeare started, probably to the 3rd week of June. We were actually performing Cobb while we're in rehearsals for Shakespeare. So it did exactly what it was designed to do. Some money came in through free will donations. People were very generous to us. So that helped us pay for the actors and pay for some of the costumes and some of the advertising. That worked out very well. Betwixt and between, we put The Tempest on its feet, and for that we received, I wrote and we awarded a $1,000 grant from Orange Arts. 100% of that money went to pay the performers. That's the stipulation that they set forth. We're not going to give you $1,000 to go rent the tent or put up portable toilets, that type of thing. So the rest of those monies we worked towards getting sponsors and used some money out of the budget, of course. What I was particularly proud of with The Tempest, even though we lost the first day of performance due to that crazy storm we had, you might have seen in the paper, it said The Tempest gets wiped out by the Tempest. And that's what happened. It was, but the tent people came and they were right on the money. They put everything back up. We salvaged the 3 extra performances. And what was really, really special this year, we utilized 4 students from the Goshen High School, and including and a school teacher from the Goshen High School. So that under that tent for those 3 performances, we saw a lot of young faces. They came to see their friends, and they got exposed to Shakespeare. So they loved it. We made it very user-friendly. Hugh McKay, who's an English teacher up there, and Justin Pietropalo, who's a Goshen grad. He's a junior literature major at Alfred. the three of us adapted the play, so it was still true to Shakespeare's words, but you could really follow along. So it did what our theater series is supposed to do, to explore educational, biographical, and classical plays, so that the audience, which is also the same as our readers, their appetites get whet and they come into the library and they want to learn more. And it's happened. It's happened. The personal testimonials that we've gotten back, one of the husbands went kicking and screaming and really, really liked it and wants to know more about Shakespeare. And that's kind of what it's all about. I know a lot of, and I thank you, I think all of you at some of these things, if not all of these things. So you, as board members, it's great for us when you folks come out, because you get to see what exactly it is we're trying to do. You know, this is not, as I said in the Chronicle, this is not show business. We're not trying to be a community theater group. This is a no fooling around, certified educational theater experiment. And we're in our 7th year. We've done 13 productions now, and it's working. Exactly what we said we were going to do, we're doing. So, and we know it's working because other libraries are starting to call and go, hey, would you bring that over to us? And you know, that's something I told Matt I would never do without all you folks knowing what our plans were, which is why I told you we were taking Ty Cobb on the road. So that was a good chunk of the summer. We went into the big band, which was mid-July, and it was hot. The only reason our attendance down was because it was so hot. And Jim will tell you, we had the ice cream there, courtesy of What's the Scoop, and the friends and the community development programs that I do. We kind of came together. Norton and Christensen, once again, ponied up the money, the $800 for the band. We think about it, we get a 21-piece big band with a vocalist for $800. And these folks are coming from Poughkeepsie. They love coming to Goshen. They were very pleased to be back on the library lawn. They liked the idea that we experimented with the other 2 parks, but the quaintness of it, and thank goodness the shade, it made it okay. And the traffic was fine. There's some motorcycles, but I think folks are getting used to it. That is always a big, big hit for us, and it was strictly, maybe 100, had to be 100 degrees.
It was brutal.
It was really, really rough. So, but I still think we probably had well over 150 people. No questions for that. And for Shakespeare in the Park, we our biggest crowd was 130, and our smallest crowd was 77. But we lost that one day. The other thing that's important to note, I did not ask for a review for the Tempest. The Tame issue was last year. What happens is, if you're doing 2 weekends, you call the Times Herald Record, they send a critical reviewer, and your review always comes in the Tuesday after that first weekend. I've always done it. Thank goodness we always get very good reviews, and you know, we hire really talented people. This year, the Tempest is a tough play, and I wasn't really sure where we were going with it. And I said, you know what, Ken, put your money where your mouth is. It's not about the review. Yeah, it's going to get more people to come, but what if it backfires and, you know, maybe we didn't adapt it very well. You know, maybe it wasn't going to be that great. The important part was young people were still involved and learning, and that was all because of the library. It was 100% because of the efforts that we put in to this project. And in retrospect, I should have invited them because we would have gotten a great review, but that probably affected our second weekend. We probably would have grabbed another 25 people for each show. That's what my numbers tell me over the years. So that took us through to the end of July, and we just this past Saturday had the Goshen Jazz Festival. For those of you who aren't familiar with how this worked out, the Jazz Festival was started by the Goshen Rotary Club 7 years ago in an effort to honor Willie Lyon Smith, who was a Goshen native born on Green Street, became one of the greatest stride pianists in the history of jazz, played with Duke Ellington, you name it, he did it. After their second or third year, they realized it did not flow with their mission statement. But every president of the Rotary is obliged to do a project. This happened to be Mr. Vince Hammond's project. He didn't want to let it go. He had a really good artistic director in place, Christopher Sullivan, who we still use to this day. And all of the things were set. It was a matter of just kind of getting a couple missing links in there. And I think we did that. So this was, I guess, my 4th year, maybe, our 4th year being involved. And this past Saturday was great. We were in 5 different venues, and all of the venues all tell me that they did very well financially. The music was incredible. It went from noon until 9 o'clock at night. The venues, in case you didn't know, were Howell's, Big Dave's, Mulaney's, New Street, and 170 West Main. We wrapped around the idea, I think I might have reported to you last time, 9/11's a sensitive date. You all saw some letters to the editor. How can anybody dream of having a festival on this date? And I'll let smarter people have that discussion. But what we knew we wanted to do, after meeting with the venue owners and the musicians, and I spoke with you folks, was that if we're going to go ahead and do this, is to make it incredibly respectful, memorial, and indeed historical. Willie the Lion Smith is an historical figure. 9/11, unfortunately, is a date in our history. How do we do this? Jazz is America's music. So we subtitled it Healing Through Music. And it started at 11:30 in the morning with a memorial wreath-laying ceremony. I recited Walt Whitman's I Hear America Singing as Chris Sullivan played the stand-up bass behind me. And then we asked trustee Malcolm Stewart to say a few words. He was incredibly eloquent, and it was gut-wrenching. He did a beautiful job. And then we had Pete and Laura Rollins, who were in uniform, the disabled vets of Orange County, and they took the red, white, and blue wreath, which you see down by the flagpole, and as they marched it to put it in its final place of rest, Christopher played God Bless America on the bass. When it started, we probably had about 30 people gathered. Many of the village trustees, Mayor Higgins was there. As the 20-minute, 15-minute ceremony went on, people stopped their cars and turned their radios off. And people riding their bicycles stopped and took their helmets off. And people walking, little girl down to the candy store stopped. So when it was all said and done, I'm getting different reports, but I'm guessing there were about 50 people who had a moment. And that was because Goshen Public Library and Historical Society took that opportunity to make sure we did that in that fashion. So I know we have a grateful community out there. So that's how our summer went. Looking into the fall, I'll be talking with Jim's group next Tuesday. No, next Tuesday. Give you a quick idea what I would like to do. I did this when I ran the newspapers and education program at the Times Herald Record. We did a thing called the Orange County Trivia Contest. You get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 teams of 3 people. You get one from the Rotary, one from the fire department, one from the library board, the Lions Club, whatever. And the three people on a team can consult. In that time, I worked with Ted Sly. We fashioned 150 questions on Orange County trivia. And you 3 are a team, you get 10 questions. You got 7 out of 10. Let's see how they do. Oh, they get 8 out of 10. Okay, you're out. And you do it, and it's a round robin type of thing. And it can be a wonderful night. We did it at the Owen Murphy and raised roughly $5,000 that evening. We get sponsors. We get people to give us gift certificates to the restaurants. All the restaurants love to do that. Our Lions Club golf outing, they're falling over each other. $25 to X's restaurant. Why? Because you're going to bring 3 people and spend $100. They love it. They love it. That's why the Taste of Goshen was such a hit. So I have more ideas, how this would work. The nice thing about this, I've already gotten buy-in from the Independent. Tom Leak is the new editor there, and Tom spoke to the powers that be. And as long as it's not going to cost them any cash, but in-kind donation, we can do our ads in the Indy. We can do our invitations through the Indy. They will help us fashion the questions because they have the historical section. We have Ann right here to do questions. We are the library. And I can be actively involved in doing that and getting that done. And then you say to Mr. and Mrs. Smith who want to come, yeah, it's going to cost you, $35 a couple. And you get whomever to put a little food out, that kind of thing. Make it a nice night, a fun night. And it does another thing that I wanted to mention. I apologize. It does something else that is critically important in my estimation, which I believe that the biographical plays are doing. The Shakespeare's not doing it yet, but I have a plan for that. These types of things get that Goshen community member who just simply doesn't have time to be involved in their community by virtue of the fact that they're always commuting and working. And everyone's looking to find that guy. My Lions Club wants him, the Rotary wants him, the politicians want their vote, and the library wants their services. And it's not because of apathy. they're literally just exhausted. And I can name 10 guys like this that I know because I teach their children. And they're like, Ken, I'd love to be involved, but I'm never, ever, ever home. Something like this, if we can fashion it on a Sunday afternoon or on a weekend where they are home, because they're not here because they don't want to be involved. But there's only so many hours in the day. And these guys are so grateful now. We're starting a Leo club with the Lions, and parents are so happy that their kids are going to be involved in this community because they're so busy running around. So the way we're going to target that, just to back up a second, aside from ideas like this, probably, Matt, by next summer, I'm really confident we're going to do some children's theater. We're going to do no fooling around, not silly nonsense stuff, but a really good version for 7 to 9-year-olds of Jack and the Beanstalk with professional adult actors. Because last time we did something like that was the No Strings Marionette, and the place was packed. So I think there's a way to get these folks, and that's basically my report. I don't know if there's any questions or anything else.
The Tempest was wonderful.
Thank you.
It really was.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it very much.
Thank you very much. When you and your husband said that it was good, I said, all right, there's 2 educators, I'm okay. And then Jim came over and said, this is a tough play, you did a good job. And then I knew we were good then. At that point, I didn't care what anybody else said. I said, yes. We got the smart people saying we were good. So, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay. Unfinished business, Acadia Hills update. Oh, there's no R
I was
there.
going to Acadia Park.
Okay. Well,
It's vacation on the brain
well,
again.
your vacation hills update then.
So how would they have that? Do they
I don't
want
actually have an update. I thought that Frank had spoken. I wasn't sure whether you had anything else or heard
Just a-
anything back from the town.
I did have 2 conversations with Doug Bloomfield. The first one was exploratory. The second one, he came back and said that he talked to the town attorneys. The town attorneys are convinced that on the date that we picked up our taxing power in the election that made us a school district library, all connections with the town were severed as far as he was concerned, and that they feel that they have no liability at all. I mentioned that if he wants to get his town attorneys to do some digging, his town attorney would find that it is a town obligation to provide library service to its population, and that goes back to, as far as I can remember, state law enacted in 1910, when he disagreed with me that it existed, that it was a thing that was real. I said I would go out and check the law one more time, but I am pretty certain that I knew what the law said. And we left it there, and I went in and had my lung operated on, so this thing got away from me. I apologize. We are at a stalemate. The last, if somewhere along the line I'm gonna prove to Bloomfield that it is the town's obligation. He's of the attitude that he's trying to knock every nickel and dime out of a liability for the town budget and doesn't want to get involved. That's where we stand. He almost slapped me in the face with the comment that if those houses are not in the Goshen School District and we are a Goshen School District library, why we even care? And I didn't have the answer except for the fact that, from what I understand, RCLS has asked us to take a look at the gaps in the coverage in the county, and that's why we care. So anyway, that's where we stand until I can prove to Doug Bloomfield that the town in fact does have a responsibility to providing library service, and then to prove that we are the venue for, therefore, I think we're at a standoff there.
Has
If any,
anyone,
anybody has a suggestion, go ahead.
has anyone from Arcady Hills come in looking for a card and been turned out?
No, but,
Have we given cards to people who are in the Chester School District that live in Arcady?
yeah, I think there's a way to get right now.
So I think that
It's,
that's
the
what
problem
we
is
have to
it's
do.
it's right now in our, it's,
They're in our system right now, right?
They're in our system.
And they're in our-
They
and they're-
aren't paying taxes into the
right,
system.
but they're
That's the
written,
problem.
exactly, but they are, it is written in our, policy handbook that, I mean, this has been like this, not to say it shouldn't be changed, but the reason this came up to me was because someone highlighted as part of our policy, one of our circulation, actually the head of circulation, and I had never seen it, where it explicitly says we give cards to these people even though they're in this weird, you know, limbo.
Right, so we,
So that's why it came up in the first place. I didn't even know to that point that we had this little unserved group. And even Robert Hubshaw, when I brought it up to him, I never noticed that sliver of red there, you know, that these people
Sure,
were
they
there,
don't have.
so. Because what they, right now, it's, I'm trying to do this too without getting into some kind of turf war with Chester. You know, we want to be, because they're sort of taking, you know, we've all left it so that, well, there's not a lot of them, so, you know, if they come to you, you take them. If they come to us, we'll take them, and we'll just leave it at that.
Right.
But Linda is extremely punctilious or fastidious and wants everything, you know, sort of gone over with, and that's good.
Well,
Sometimes I wish I didn't wake this sleeping dragons, but we should deal with it and figure out what to do. There's a couple of, I wanted to bring up one obscure law that's on the books, because I've been researching this too. I didn't see the town law, but I don't dispute that there is, I mean,
It's municipal
something
law.
out there. Okay. I was shocked to find that there is this strange law in the books. This is more just for trivia than anything, because I don't think we would use it against them. But that if no other library will serve a person in the state, then any school they go to, believe it or not, high school they go to, has to open their doors to them because they're unserved. So yeah, a high school library is their library by default, if nobody else, you know, which is odd, but it's there. You know.
But they're obviously not in the Goshen School District.
But it would be
The town
any,
of Goshen.
right, it would have to be the, since they're the
it's a
town, it
weird-
would be
I don't
our,
even know why the development's cut up like
well, that's, yeah.
that. Yeah, it's.
I don't know how many
bizarre.
people there are, that's the other
There's
question.
240 houses in the development, I think 40 of them are in the Goshen School District, so we're talking about.
Okay, so it's more than I thought.
Almost 200 houses, so that's quite a few people,
Right.
but I don't know for certain that those numbers are entirely correct. I do know that if you go into the, I know GIS has a map up,
Mhm.
and you can see it goes Arcadia Hills, there's this like little
It's like,
scoop out, and they're all Chester School District, and I don't know the whole rest of the Arcadia Road. See, like, I think, Conklin Town Road is all, but that one part got carved out, I don't know.
it's all historical stuff. It goes back to the farms,
There you go, you
where the
remember.
farms were, where the one-room schools were.
I guess so, but it's
It's
really
all,
funny that
you know.
when they built this development, they just kept that division in place. It seems
Well,
silly that
the
if there was one
developer didn't care.
farmhouse. No, of course he didn't.
Yeah, they just bought some land,
Right. Yeah.
and
Would it,
it wasn't
would it be
used.
helpful if our attorney did some research to give to you, so that when you spoke with
Just
Doug
to
once
know.
again?
Yeah, I
They
think.
should be notified though, these people, if they aren't covered and they don't know it, they should be notified. And,
He
that
just
right
is trying to
there-
avoid paying for them.
I think our attorney should be involved, and I
Yeah.
think,
Yes.
once he's been involved, if he indicates that it's improper for us to serve these people,
Yeah.
then we need to identify them and send them a letter saying what our problem is,
Right.
and, advise them to talk to Doug Bloomfield.
And I wondered, is there some way to,
They can all
Well,
show up at a
but-
town meeting.
But realistically, what, you know, this is another one of those cases, what's outstanding in this case?
charge them
What do you
library?
mean, what is outstanding?
What is
They don't have
outstanding in the
school
case?
tax, but
I mean,
everybody
these
pays
people live
library
in the Goshen, in the Chester School
What's
District.
the precedent?
It's nothing.
Excuse me?
You mean, what's the precedent? What's
No,
the-
we have no standing. The Goshen Library has no standing here.
To
Well,
deny
These
them?
people are not in our service area.
But we have no standing to the extent that we have no legal responsibility to them. But we certainly, since we've been servicing them, providing a service for them,
Right.
just as common courtesy, we should inform them of the problem, of the issue, And then we could also, in that letter, make reference to the model, which is the Minnesink model, which is that in Minnesink, there are some people who don't have a library, and the town steps into the breach. But it's really a legal issue. So I think we need to, I think we need to thank Frank for doing what he did, but our lawyer has the responsibility here to get this thing sorted out as much as possible.
And if these people don't even know that this problem exists,
Right.
tell them.
Because they pay taxes to the town of Goshen.
They pay Goshen,
Right.
it's a really weird development, I live there, it's a very strange development. And, I live in the section obviously, it's the Goshen School District.
I hope so.
Really? Where's your driver's license?
I actually made a point when I bought the house, my lawyer actually went over to make sure, because I wasn't gonna buy it if it wasn't, I didn't wanna be in the Chester School District. But, most of the development is in the Chester, now I'm in the Chester Fire District, but the Goshen Water District and the Goshen School District, the town of Goshen, it's the weirdest thing, I get this weird combination of taxes I have to pay. So I'm sure they're completely unaware that they are not covered by any library.
But they're paying taxes to
They
the
pay
town
the
of.
town of Goshen taxes, property taxes, but we pay Goshen School District taxes, and you also
Right.
pay library tax.
Right.
They aren't charged any library tax because they're in the town of Goshen, not the town of Chester, and they aren't in the Goshen School District.
And like you
so-
said, some of them, may not be aware, or Jim said,
They
may
probably
not be
have no
aware.
idea.
And they may take their costs straight to a
Well,
town
that's
meeting
just it,
and
well, they
say,
should then, if they
And
aren't covered.
provide us with
Well,
services.
they should
One
know
of the
about it, and then
problems
they should
is
be-
that they're in, they legally are in the area, well, they're not, but the Chester Library is not a school district
It's a
library, it
public-
doesn't
right,
have the
it's a town
taxing
library.
capabilities.
Right, it's a town library, so it just covers the town.
So
It was
And
covered-
these people live in the town of Goshen,
Uh,
but not
They-
this Goshen School District, so they're just like this little bubble.
They can come to the town of Goshen board meetings and say,
Yes, they can, they absolutely can, and say, I
Doug,
want library
where's
coverage.
my library? Are you gonna build us
Stamp
one?
their foot, right.
Maybe they'll get a new library before we do.
And they'll think us- they will
Move the whole
say-
library into Arcadia Hills, problem
We could
solved.
sell them this one, maybe.
Okay, so
That's
it's still
good.
unfinished
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
okay.
Still
I'll check with
unfinished again.
Rob.
Alright, so the next thing we added was the charter vote. I guess the only thing that we do is change the name and change the number of trustees. And we're not gonna change the name.
No, and I don't see any reason to change them to trustees.
There's no point in
There's no
this.
room
No,
at the end.
well, we can't,
Those
we're
are
only
made it
allowed to
free.
have 14 people down here,
That's true.
so.
Yeah,
We
Make
could
it
have
five.
14,
Maybe to
but
reduce the
one member
number.
and Matt have to sit outside.
if we made the public sections, public, parts of the meetings out in the public area, in the
We'll get a
lawn.
monitor out there, they can watch it on the.
But I think somewhere if we get a new building, we'll probably need a bigger board, because if you wanna have people active in doing things.
I think it's the
7
kind of
is
thing that
quite
we're not
large.
going to slam the door on a future change, right? If we decide right now we want 7, we could revisit it
Could
Yeah,
10
Yeah.
years from now.
Maybe
It's
revise it.
$60, that's the,
We
you know.
can revise
but
it
you-
if we have to.
Right.
Yeah, so someday down the line, if we decide that,
When we cut
This
the
isn't
red
chaotic
ribbon
enough.
on whatever building and wherever, whenever, and we do the champagne on the side, and we can revisit it
Change them.
if necessary. Right now, it's hard enough to get 7 people to run the library.
Alright, so tell them to go away.
Until a new building is built with a larger meeting space.
Yes.
Am I to understand the board's in agreement that there'll be no change to the charter?
No,
That's
no,
what I-
no change to the, was there something else we had to change?
Yeah, that was, the change is the description, just the description of the service area.
Service
They're gonna
area.
add some
Right.
verbiage.
It was a clarification.
Right.
Right.
Some
So we
verbiage,
could-
verbiage about the 501c3 status that's not on there, that should be, and something about the commissioner being the person. Now, I don't quite understand this, maybe this is just my ignorance of legal matters, my luck that I don't know that much about legal matters, but somehow the commissioner has to be named as, if someone brings a suit against a library, the commissioner is also, the suit's being brought against the commissioner of education.
I thought that's in the law.
I guess it is, and they want that, if they
They
want it as,
Oh, okay.
put into the charter,
I
right?
thought that was in our trustee handbook.
But it's not in our charter, that's
it's
the
not
problem.
written in our charter.
It should be in the charter.
Oh,
So you can bring that
I
back
know
to
it's in the
okay.
law, and I thought there was something in the handbook about that.
So
you're
should
right, I
we
do remember.
approve the changes that were just specified, or should, you wanna bring it, give a copy of the next month's?
I think
packet or
we'll just
something?
have the whole thing out instead of amending, so we'll wait till October with the changes.
Yeah,
Can we have it as part of our packet so they can,
we can make copies, I just
Yes.
gave to,
that way
sure.
we can read it before we come and.
I mean, I can just email it to all of you.
Commissioner of Education must be served in any,
Maybe we'll have it notary by
any
then.
suit that
No, no,
Yes, I
that,
mean,
that,
maybe she's taking a
we're
class.
trying to clarify this one point.
Oh, well, okay, well, maybe she could come to that meeting, yes.
So I'm to understand that the charter will be revisited at the next meeting,
Yes.
or,
Yeah.
thank you.
With match changes.
Right.
So, under new business, well, Robert's not here, so we're gonna go to media relations, cause that came up.
So I was on Facebook.
This is why they're gone.
Well, see, I go on Facebook because I have family all over the country, so anyway, I was on Facebook, and Vicky, an instant messenger, or how do I say it? Anyway, she, Pam Jagodas wants to do a story on the library and what we're doing and whether or not we're moving to a new building, what our plans are, what we're doing, all this other happy stuff. But she wants to interview members of the board regarding what we're doing next. And since putting out the word for the community advisory committee, whatever we called it, I can't
Right.
remember what we called it. Since putting out the word several times, I've gotten 2 responses.
Two?
Well,
Two.
it's in the newsletter, so
It's in the
hopefully.
newsletter.
That's
I'm
what
hoping,
it's gonna go to everybody.
I was hoping, I thought, well, I mean, Vicky is, very fair-minded and very, they both pro library, and I think they would both do a good job. And I don't know what we wanna say to them, or what we wanna talk to them about, or who should do the talking. But I think it would be good just to, get the word out that we have this community advisory thingy that no one's interested in, and.
Well, so far,
So
so
far.
far.
So far.
Wait till the newsletter goes in, then they'll roll in.
Well, it's been up on the website for
Yeah,
like
we put it
6
on.
weeks.
Yeah.
and,
We
Since
can,
the last
we can
meeting.
strong arm some.
You know you can work.
Right, it's been up on the board in the building, it's been, and we put it up on our Facebook page too, didn't we?
Yes.
It was also like summertime-ish, so people are still thinking.
Stop making
Yeah.
excuses, okay?
I'm sorry.
So,
We're still on the beach in the
what do we want this group to do anyway?
Well, but
Oh, wait,
we're
the
not
media
dealing
thing,
with that
the
yet.
newspaper.
Well, we're not, we're dealing with the media thing, so.
Right, we are. I know.
I
We have to.
I was given the request for an interview with the board,
All right, so,
and I'm putting it before the board. They want
I
it.
think we're in good hands.
well, I think the
But-
president should be the spokesperson for the board. I mean, I know you
Oh,
would
no,
do a
I'm
great
just,
job,
I
that's not
just,
the question, the question
I
is,
wasn't asking for
should we have one
questions,
person,
I'm just saying.
do we have more than one? I think unless it's a burden from the point of view of your time, I think you, as president, you should be the one person that is the voice of the board. And what you are voicing, of course, is the board's position on those
Which we
things.
don't have yet.
Yeah,
Well, we
right.
have a number of positions.
No, there's nothing for,
Well, but the fact that we're exploring, that's a position.
yes,
Yeah.
well,
The fact
it's
that
a
we're gonna-
direction.
The fact that we're gonna get a citizen advisory committee, that's also, the
Right.
fact that we visited 3 or 4 places. There are some specific things that have happened that you more than anyone else is aware of.
Right.
And I think you would be the appropriate person unless there's some reason why.
Or
you-
the head of the
you're not.
community relations committee.
Well, that was the other thing. Well, I told her that we had our meeting this evening and that I would get back to her tomorrow and let her know. Or I'd get back to her after the meeting, that's what I said. That our meeting was tonight, and then I would get back to her after our meeting was who we were talking to her. So,
I'm okay with both, as the president and the vice president, and as the head of the Community Resources Committee, be both sitting with the reporter and, answering whatever questions, making sure that our point of view is clearly defined out there, and
well,
what our
that's why I'm
mission.
okay with her. If the record has called me, I probably wouldn't be having this. But, yeah, she's, I've never had an interview with her where she changed what we said, deleted, took it out of context. She's always been very good like that. That whole paper's always been very good like that. So,
Which paper is it?
the Chronicle.
I'll be probably there for that, asking questions, are you folks, thinking about a new building? What is the
Yeah.
current structure, why
I
do you
mean-
want a new building, and those, we know why.
Right,
Well,
but
you
a lot
both
of
know
people
why.
don't.
Right.
A lot of people don't.
Right.
One of, like I said, I got 2 emails. One was from someone who only moved here 6 months ago. So, they don't know of all the nonsense that's going on, so, you know, they should probably on their own. So, start off really with it. And just, like I said, we put this information out now 6 weeks and I've got 2 bites, that's it.
So I guess our points would be that we're trying to get a community advisory board together
For what purpose?
for the purpose of,
Helping us decide what we're doing
yeah, but I
next,
don't want it to be a
because,
repeat
you
of the
know,
last community advisory
We-
board,
We're
which.
not gonna do,
With
endless
haywire.
panels. Just
I have-
discussion like that, I'm not.
I have all that stuff that we did the last time, you
Right,
know.
but we're not doing all that.
But we're not doing that.
No.
No, we're not.
We just need a bigger space, for more books
We
and
need to-
have
right.
more programs, and so in case we're ADA compliant and they don't shut us down. I mean, those are pretty good reasons.
I think the land is gonna come up, well, are you gonna sell the land, or are you still thinking of building a
We
land
don't
there,
know.
so.
See, I think we don't know what we're doing is a legitimate thing to say. We haven't made a
Right now,
decision about that.
We're getting
in
there.
fantasy. We're
And
putting
that's
our
why we
toes
need
in
the
the
advisory
water.
committee.
That's part of what the, I think,
I don't know what they're gonna tell us, except, yes, what you're doing sounds good.
Well, here's
Right?
what,
I don't think they can guide us. We're supposed to guide them.
I
but
think
I
what we
think
want
that
is
they could
feedback from
bring
the public.
technical, maybe things to us. Maybe they could be the voice instead of us in saying, well, maybe they could do the research. What size library do you need to fit to serve 20,000 people in a community? I mean, maybe
Right.
somebody's
We're
willing to.
past that point.
Yeah, we are.
Well,
I think
we are,
Way
but it
past that
involves the community more, instead of saying
We're
we want a
3 years
cafe, we
past
don't want a
it.
cafe.
We're 4 years past that
I
point.
think if you, it's like developing a product, you know, if you're gonna develop, you find the people who are gonna use it, you get some feedback. It's market research, kind of, is what we're doing, but we're not going to be.
But pro and con, I mean, we wanna hear
Yeah,
from
but
We
both
we're
did the
also not-
market
we're not-
research.
Yes, but that's 4-year-old market research, and that's different people, and it's a
We're gonna,
different
you know,
mindset.
we're gonna
and-
bog ourselves down once again.
No,
I don't
no,
want
no,
to.
Not
no,
gonna
we're
get
not.
anywhere.
I
We're
don't
not.
want to.
We're not bogging ourselves. I think
I don't
Jim
want
was
to.
right. 1-2 meetings, we're done.
Yeah.
We're not gonna beat that horse like
No,
she did.
not with the community,
gonna
not with the
happen.
We're
cafe.
short.
Yeah, but
that
we
kind of
we
thing.
know what we wanna do with a library.
No,
But, you know, if
we
you're
know what
gonna-
they wanted
If you're going
do.
to ask an advisory committee to give advice, you can't say to them, oh, by the way, we know what we want already, but
No,
give
no,
us
no.
your advice. That's not you're not really being fair to them. I wouldn't want to serve on a committee like that if the group I was going to make recommendations to was telling me, oh, by the way, we already know what we want.
Well, I think if
Well, no-
we're going to have an advisory committee, then we have to give them parameters. We want your advice in this little, you know, the Venn
Yeah, I
diagram
think-
kind of thing. This is where it overlaps, and this is
Yeah,
where we
you
want
should
your
say,
advice.
this is
Not-
where we are at this
well,
point
yes,
in the
freedom.
decision-making progress.
What's your fantasy library?
These look
No,
like our
this is
options
what
at
our
this
options
point.
are, what do
Considering
you
this
want?
building and that.
Yeah, and
My
we need to
hope-
think about this direction that we're
Right,
going
that's
in.
what I'm saying. What was done the last time was just open-ended fantasy library
got
stuff, and
us
we
nowhere.
can't do it.
I
And
did
it
a report, there
shot
were
us in the
68
foot.
people in the
Right,
focus groups.
and that's lovely,
We're
but
not doing
60, no, we're not doing that, and like I said, so far we got 2.
My,
And, no, I think what we want is for people to know, okay, we have some options, we want some feedback, so that we can narrow the options so we can put up a vote. That's kind of what we're after. And so here are our options, we want some feedback.
Right.
Once we get the feedback, we have a vote. This is a rip off the Band-Aid kind of thing, not a drag it out for a
Not
year
what
and
do
a
you want to
half.
see in your library type
Right,
thing.
right,
Here's
make
our
line
options,
changes.
here's what's
We
in
have the
front of you,
options
what are
already.
your feelings?
Right.
type
We already
thing.
have the options.
We already know what
Right.
the options
Yeah.
are,
We're not from
but we
square
will-
one per se anymore, we're.
Right,
Thanks
well,
for
here's
saying
the
that.
options.
Frank.
and-
I'd like to make a point that in the beginning of September, I spoke to the Goshen Senior Citizens Club. Goshen Senior Citizens Club meets every 2 Mondays a month over in the Goshen Senior Citizens Center. Incidentally, I am on the board of directors of the Goshen Senior Citizens Center. But having said that, I gave a talk to the Goshen Senior Citizens Club, which represented maybe 300 people in the room. They have a huge turnout out for these meetings. And I told them what we have been talking about to date. I talked about the Grand Street building, I talked about Healy, I talked about 266 Main Street. Surprisingly, keep in mind I probably had the toughest audience to deal with in this town. I believe that I had overwhelming support from these people for the concept of the Grand Street building. Overwhelming support. I took it on myself to, and I mentioned it to you afterwards, Madam Chairman, but I asked the Goshen senior citizens to elect a member from their group to be put on our Community Action Committee. And they were excited to be heck about running an election. In fact, they were discussing the election as I had to run out because I had a pre-surgical meeting a half hour after this talk, so I had to run right out and take care of that. I could say, surprisingly, this is the group of people who are sitting there. These are the naysayers. It's just the swell of support and the concept. I didn't expect it. I honestly didn't expect it. It was there. I took that and came to you, Madam Chairman, and suggested that I was supposed to talk to the Rotary a week or so ago. Unfortunately, the Rotary, the president of the Rotary canceled me at the last minute. He's a neighbor of mine, and he thought I was still in the hospital because my lawn needed mowing.
Well, why didn't he?
So he canceled me in the last minute. I think I'm set for 2 weeks or so, but I thought it would be a great idea to talk to as many groups and organizations in town and ask them to provide us with a member. What I've done on the side, and I can't discuss the group itself, but I talked to a group who put me in touch with their national group, and there is a chance of getting a major donation for a major room in any new library paid for by a major local organization or the national branch of a local organization if we name a room after them. And so just this thing has developed out of me going out and trying to talk to groups. And what I've just been doing is telling them what we've been doing. We've been considering this, we've been looking at that. We haven't made any decision, but we've got lots of things to do. We've been looking at the costs, and letting them know what we've been doing on a totally open basis. I've answered questions which, were not the kind of questions you got about people playing games on computers. They were serious. They were serious questions, and they made sense. People wanted to know what we were going to do with the Salesian property. People wanted to know what we were going to do with these. But I thought they were all decent questions and should have been answered and were answered. We don't know yet, but we have possibilities, and these are the possibilities.
Well, I get the feeling that's kind of what the interview would be
Yeah,
about.
that's what I was just gonna
And,
say. That's
so
probably where we'll go with that.
That's probably is where she's going with that.
We're gonna
And-
say we're getting the senior center, they're gonna elect a representative to be on this board, we're looking to
Right,
get
and
the
we're looking
Rotary,
at-
somebody to sit on this board,
That's
so we're
all
getting
good.
key groups of.
And we'd sort of like to get every organization in town to have
And that's
somebody
what we'll
on.
say, and, we're not, it's not an open-ended, we're starting from scratch, we're leaning towards this building,
That's what we
but we're getting
decided.
these people involved, this is the way we're moving right now.
But this is also an effort to get these organizations to take ownership of the library too.
Well,
And I think
it's a
this
community-
one
yeah,
national
right,
thing
right.
is a great thing.
That's phenomenal.
Um, I wanted to talk to Matt. I know 2 years ago we talked at one of these board meetings about building a web page in which we were going to list all of the organizations in towns and when their meetings were, and have an update newsletter for those people. And I'd like to, as part of this whole conversation, bring that idea back up to the front burner and try and push that, because if there's a place where you could go to find information about every organization in town, wouldn't it be great to have it on the library webpoint, and then where we can go and take that taking it back into these organizations and become joint owners of them with our library, and joint owners with them of their organization. And I think it's,
I think that the chamber might already have a calendar like that.
Yeah, they probably
With
do,
all
but
the
it wouldn't hurt for us to
meetings
do it too.
No, it
just in
wouldn't.
case.
I mean, it
Well,
depends
the
on
only
how much
problem
trouble it
is,
is.
it's a lot of work for somebody to keep in track of these meetings.
There's
And
also.
if it's being done by an organization like the Chamber, of which we are a member,
We could have a link to the chamber.
yeah, you could link from our
Mhm.
page to their calendar of meetings in the community, something like that.
Events.
I think we should explore what they're doing rather than try to duplicate it, because our people are pretty busy.
Yeah,
We don't know if we'd be duplicating it, maybe.
Right.
I think it's a great idea to, yes, to look into this.
we
further.
do you remember talking about that a couple of years ago?
Vaguely, I do, yes, yeah.
I know that the Chronicle again
Has
has an online calendar
Right.
that anyone can go on and edit. So if we had something like that, if we could come in and go on meeting information, that might be a better thing, because then we're not running it ourselves.
Right.
We just have the space for it.
Yeah, I'll have
That's a
that.
thought, just to see if there anything else.
And asking for the volunteers to go in the same direction that Frank is going, to have all stakeholders try to be represented.
Sure.
If we don't get, a large volume of volunteers for our focus group, so we're calling it
Maybe
Advisory.
board, I think.
Advisory.
Advisory board.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe
Yeah.
also contact the PTA presidents of the schools and see if they would like to come and be part of the thinking. No?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's not a bad idea to put it out too. It's a school district library,
Yeah.
and the parents who have kids in the school have a
Are the
vested interest
stakeholders.
in a quality library. And so I could see why we would wanna, give them a heads up. But I'm not sure how we would go about exactly getting the school involved, but that would be.
It would put,
Yeah,
I'd be
and
happy to call the
PTA,
principals.
not that I have a visceral reaction to the PTA, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I refuse to join, I just have had issues, so anyway, whatever. But my eldest child is 23, it's been very bad. But yes, so you say PTA and I guess, so I don't know, my
I'm
reaction
sorry.
is probably not trustworthy here, but.
Harper Valley.
Yeah, it's worse than that. But
I
I
got
was
that
thinking.
song in my head now. Home on tables and all that, yeah.
Okay, don't put songs in my head.
Yeah, I know.
Don't tell me so much
No, I'm
room
just
in there.
thinking
go
of
home
parents
now.
in general,
Now,
not
maybe.
necessarily, we don't always want the same people involved in
Right.
everything, because then it becomes their thing, and if we get parents outside of,
But if they want
people who
to
also
pass it
run
on
the
to
PTA.
their, however.
Pass it on to their friends,
they
not
have-
necessarily everybody who's involved in the
No,
schools,
the,
who I have, who I was thinking.
I think the
Now that-
seniors is great, the Rotaries is great, we
Seniors
need to
will-
get a
that's- I
fireman
heard
now,
that's
that would be the
too.
bomb.
The firemen could get
selling
it.
tickets?
I mean, good or bad, we're not biased, let's
I could
come,
try to get
anybody.
somebody at the
Get us
same
the
fire
biggest
company.
naysayer on the fire department and have him sit there and he might go,
Yeah,
Right,
I'll try to get
so
somebody
we
from the
have
Mystic
input
Firehouse.
from
That
all
would
over the
be-
place.
That's,
that would
that's,
be-
I'm not ruling
that's
them out,
my.
I just,
the sec, I
I
don't know
want
what that would be like.
broaden it, not just the PTA, all the parents, that
But
was.
if they can, if they have their own, I don't,
Click.
when
Yeah,
my
I'm
son was,
sorry.
when
Sorry.
my
This
son
is my
was in
issue,
school,
too.
there was a sort of a
Sorry.
chain thing that happened, with news, or maybe
Oh, like
now,
a phone,
or
like a
maybe
phone
now
tree.
they've
Well, they have
upgraded
the,
to,
the
SNN.
SNN, that's the, I just, right, the school
Texting.
district has the SNN
Right.
network, I
Yeah.
forget what it stands for. But I get text messages and email from them all the time, when the school's closed, when it
When
closes
the board
early.
meetings are
When the
now,
board meetings are, that might be something, if we're a school district library, maybe they'll throw us a phone and.
Yeah.
or put it also in their newsletter.
Right,
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know about that, but.
crossing.
So,
But I
Fire
forgot to
department
mention
meetings
that there was not a dissenting voice, and everybody seemed to embrace the idea, and I said, when I talked about the $27 million library we didn't get, and the possible $5 million for this library, they jumped on that one and thought it was just absolutely marvelous.
there's also the point of the tenant providing rent that goes towards operating expense.
They like that
Well, that's
idea
another,
too.
that's another
Great selling point.
checkpoint. Well,
So-
right, exactly, it's just, no,
But how do
I have
we
the
keep
engineer
this
in there.
rolling along? Don't we have to, and shouldn't we tonight,
We're gonna
set
talk
up a
about that.
date for a meeting?
Yeah, we have.
I mean, okay, we're gonna talk about it, let's talk about it,
Well,
not
we're-
wait till
Well,
the
when
next.
is
Why
their
don't we, we're
election?
still talking about media relations, aren't we?
Yes,
I don't
we
know.
we haven't solved the media
All right.
relations.
It seems
Who's
to
gonna
me
talk
Okay,
to
that,
the-
so-
it seems to me there's two things that we're talking about. One is that we each are members of various organizations. And people in those organizations, they ask us questions. And so it seems appropriate to do what Frank did. If someone in your organization asks you what's happening, you tell them. I mean, this is a public institution. You certainly should feel free to talk about what we're doing. But if a media outlet, like a newspaper, requests information, I think we should start with the president. If you're not, for whatever reason, not going to do it, then the vice president should do it. And that way, we can accomplish what you said, which was to get the word out to the community and to get people to buy into the process and hopefully to vote for the new library when we get to that stage.
I'm comfortable with the president and vice president
Me
meeting
too.
with the reporter.
Do we need a vote?
No,
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think
I
so.
think we just.
I think it's understood.
Do you feel like voting? I feel
Flip a
very
coin
be a
between the
secret
two of
vote.
you, who's gonna be the lead speaker?
Should the minutes reflect that either the president or the vice president will be a media
The-
correspondent,
Yes.
representative?
Or both?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Either or both.
President and
Yeah.
vice
Thank you.
president. I'm comfortable with and.
What do you want?
I think, can we
Yeah,
get a
that's
hold of
fine.
Marlowe's
Just,
costumes and get a crown
She
for
knows
you?
the next
and-
thing.
Yeah.
I'm fully
For the
expecting
occasion.
I don't like what
For the
you're-
100th
This is from-
celebration.
I would like
Okay,
to
just
give
let me
her-
know when she's available, she's probably flexible, that's what,
Yeah.
we'll try to get something this week.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know the
Well, it's crazy, crazy. Okay.
Okay, that's done.
All right.
Okay.
Just I want to remind everybody of the work session on September 27th at 8 p.m.
And we're
You
gonna
received
use-
your little,
Self-assessment.
your little questionnaires in here that we had from last time, and then I found a couple things online just about the ethics I thought was nice to reread and reiterate. The self-assessment was what we did, about 3 years ago when the other trustees joined. It's like just to, do I know, don't I know, oh wow, I don't, maybe I should find out type of thing. Because, yeah, you know,
And
that's
bring
all.
this with us when we come to
Yeah, so bring this all marked and,
Well, fill it out before the meeting.
yes,
Yes.
please, that's
Okay.
why you have it now, so you have like 2 weeks, I guess, to sit there and say, no, I don't, yes I do, I'm all good, and I don't need this work session.
So it's 2 weeks from today.
Or are we to research to determine the answers, or?
Right, well, that's, it's a working, it's a, I didn't know, oh my goodness, let's find out type thing.
Why did we decide 8 o'clock?
Because I have the mother daughter tea at the library right before, from 6:30 to 7:30, I know.
No, I
And
forgot,
then,
I
yeah,
didn't.
I mean, we could have done another day, but somebody said Tuesdays wasn't good, so we just
It's
made it
okay.
for 8 instead of 7:30 on Monday.
Okay.
BYOB, by the way. And the other thing,
Anything?
I like that.
I like Jameson. And then the RCL, anybody going to the legislative breakfast on October 1st. That would be a good opportunity to speak to other directors and legislatures and the directors about the ADA stuff. Like, as you're commiserating, you could say, hey, what do you know, what do you know? And maybe it'll spark something, or somebody might say, it's Bigfoot, it doesn't exist. I don't know, but that's an opportunity for that, and for a free breakfast.
Is there any way to change
Free?
it to a free
Well,
salad in the evening so that more people can go?
and this is
It's always
their
at
thing,
8
they've
o'clock.
always done it at 8:30,
I
so,
know.
yeah, it's,
I can't.
I know, it's tough. So, do we have anybody?
Matt
Matt, Mel, and Mary?
and Zip.
Anybody attending the,
Do the whole
I
spiel.
seem to have I don't know if anybody else does, all of the emails from Dan,
The trustee weekly thingies?
the sessions and
Dan
all that
Huss,
stuff. Is
yeah.
anybody going to those? Anybody?
Oh,
You thought that would be
yeah,
good?
no.
Wow.
No, this is
I did
different.
read that.
Oh, those are
Yeah,
yours.
there's
Yes,
different-
focus group
right,
set up.
Right, right,
Focus
right, right.
groups.
I think they had a poor turnout, so they had to change the date, right? Oh, poor,
We gotta, I'm
hey,
thinking we have our own
there's a
focus
theme
groups.
here. We have 2
Yeah.
people that might want, but anyway, yeah.
I'll send him in.
So,
Yeah, maybe they wanna come up.
no, so it's just the 3 of us attending the breakfast. Okey-dokey.
I keep on
Have fun.
checking them emails off to remind myself, but I think that's the one
That's
date in October that I have filled in for something else.
Yeah, I think I'm.
Then we should try to drive.
If I can, I will take off for it. I'll let you
Well,
know.
goes on.
It's a Friday.
I know, that's a great
I
day
think
to
it's
take
at
off.
119.
Just the morning.
I have all this sick time left.
Yeah, with the directions I wish I know. All right, good, all right. Okay, so next item is privilege of the floor.
I can't hear half the time. There's a lady on this side that I can't hear at all, and you gentlemen I can't hear very well. So I just hear you very well, thank God. Because I know what's going on.
Thank
And I can
God.
put pieces together. I'd like to know, what does ADA stand for? And also, you mentioned 17M. Do you have a building in mind on that, on 17M?
No,
ADA
no.
is Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay.
I think that building was the RCLS
The
building.
RCLS.
You referred to 17M. What's on 17M?
That's the RCLS building.
RCLS building is located
I
there.
mean,
Okay.
But you talked
Middletown.
about different buildings that we're considering, was,
Not tonight, we
no, not
No.
tonight.
Not
Next
tonight,
time.
no.
Well,
Next time.
In
They
the
touched
previous
on it,
meetings.
but not really.
Healy is,
Oh, there are some various buildings out there in town that might be available, that are available, and which we have looked at. Healy is one of them.
the Quattrini building is the other. I think
the
that's,
most reasonable
And
one.
I think that's it.
Well, next
That's
door.
ours.
But
Well,
is
we-
that,
we
you
looked
know,
at the
isn't
list,
that a
yeah.
crazy idea, you know, we
But we
have
had
two
to visit
libraries.
it.
But
No,
but we
no,
don't have to revisit, we don't have to visit every,
No,
Every
that
idea.
building,
No,
no
not
one's
every idea,
recommending
but that was there and there were neighbors and to be
You-
nice, we just
you were
said, let's
looking
go
at
over
a
and
piece
take a
of
look.
part
We
of
were
the
looking
land.
at the.
So we checked the box.
That was a piece of, that was the land behind that.
You have to cross our.
I just want you to know that I love coming to your meetings because I'm informed and I have to listen, I have to hear you.
You go to the Goshen Senior Citizens Club meetings.
I don't go there.
Oh.
Are we allowed to
You're
speak
too
in
young.
language?
That's right, you got it.
They're not just the only one.
No, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Ellen Mary for the letter in the paper. I think it was well written. I think I agree with it 100% because every time that I have come into this building, I have seen people working hard at their jobs, helping the patrons of this library, and they have been nothing but courteous and welcoming. And thank you for your letter.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
And thank you, Norma.
I was gonna respond to that myself, and I just couldn't bite my tongue hard enough.
You should have seen
Okay,
what I
so
crossed out.
I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of contractual matters.
are we going to discuss our position
Nothing about the building.
Well, I think
regarding the Citizens Advisory Group, and what we're gonna do with them? I think there are some things we have to talk about now, like, we should set up a date for a meeting, for the first Citizens Advisory Group meeting, because we probably include that in the next newsletter, but we have to discuss it before the next newsletter goes out, which happens before our next meeting, no?
No, it's in the mail
No, the
right now.
newsletter's in
No,
now.
there's one in, yes, now, but for the next one.
That comes out
We would
in the
include
spring.
the date we have.
That's like April.
yeah, it's.
Oh, it's
Spring.
quarterly?
It's quarterly.
Yes,
It's
spring is
Ah,
our next
jeez.
one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Quarterly.
fall. No,
I
we
thought
have
it
a
was
winter.
monthly.
We have a winter. We have a
one that
winter.
Okay.
I
comes
thought
out
it was
before
winter.
Christmas.
Okay,
Right
but
after
we have
Christmas,
to,
right
we
before.
have to move faster than quarterly.
Well,
And,
absolutely.
and, you know,
Yeah.
going
Well,
forward.
here's the thing, I put my email address out there, and the two people who responded, I came up with a thank you for your information. When we're ready, I will send out a mass email with all the information. So anybody who wants to be on the advisory board will be on an email list and get a informational email explaining to them when the meeting is, where the meeting is.
Okay,
But we have to absolutely, we have to decide that first, but it's not a general consumption kind of information because it's for the people who wanna be on the board, so.
okay,
So that
with-
was the thinking I had about it.
And with the newsletter that's coming out this week, we'll get calls and give it a
Here's
couple of
hoping.
weeks.
Here's hope, well, that's what I was
Hoping, yes.
thinking, that.
Give it a couple of weeks and come up
Right,
with a
I
date.
would
Well,
come to the next meeting with,
At our
guess
work
what, we have
session,
40
we
people.
could decide if she's got more hits from the newsletter, and then we
Right,
can
and then we
go
can
for
go
dates.
from there.
Okay,
But we
Because
need
that's 2
to,
weeks.
I think Keith is right, we need to agree on what charge we're gonna give to the committee, specific language, what their task is, and we need to give them a deadline.
Yeah, we can't have
And
enough.
we need to decide that either tonight or next week at the work session, because we just can't keep, month after month after month losing time.
Right, somebody's
There's
gonna.
two
Well, let's wait for the
incremental here.
newsletter and see if we get more bites, because it was a summer thing. And then at the work session, if we get bites, we'll do a date, we'll do a bullets of what
well,
the tasks will be for this.
but if we don't
Let's
get
do
bites, we
something.
should also discuss what we're gonna do,
Sure.
okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Step 2, yeah, or
because,
plan
I mean,
B.
even if we only end up with 5 interested people,
At least
we
it's
did
five.
it, and we
And maybe it's
gave
5
plenty
more
of people the
people.
opportunity.
If it's a
Right.
senior, if it's a Rotary, if it's a fireman, there
Right,
could
right,
be
and
any
they
better
go back and
more
talk to
people.
30, 40 people,
Great.
that's a big deal.
Yep,
So,
those
yeah,
are big people.
so between now and then, just come up with what you think it ought to be about, and we'll fine tune it
Yeah,
at the work
get-
session.
think
I
of
think
bullet
that's what
points
it's
you
about.
would like CAB to visit and what you think they should do. So then we would have like 6 bullet points, 6
Right.
tasks. That is your homework. You choose to accept it, if not,
Yes.
yes. Okay,
Okay,
Now-
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
second. Okay, and so at 9:04, we are entering into executive session.